Thank you so much for rejoining us at Out of the Bane. I am Tom Nixon, born at sea, raised on radio, along with my co-host and my co-brother, John Nixon.
I was also born at sea, raised on radio.
Well,
I'll get it right. I'll get it by next year. I'll have it down.
Okay, deal. Well, someone who was born, I think, and raised, I think, near to us up here in the D is our guest today, who's also rejoining the podcast, and he's got an update on his awesome project that, John, if there's one question we get asked more than any other on YouTube, it's when is the Bobby Kimball doc coming out? So let's bring the man on himself. Maybe he's got an update for us, Mr. John Zaika. John, welcome back.
Thank you, fellas. Nice to be back. Yes, I was born in Dearborn. I grew up in Michigan. I went to school outside of Ann Arbor in a little town called Dexter, but very close to U of M.
Awesome. Very good.
I love that home state, man. I miss it terribly.
So let's maybe recap for those who did not join us for the first episode when we had you on. Let's tell us a little bit about what this project is quickly, and then we'll get to what's happened since the last time you've been on. So the documentary is called Kite on a String, and tell us a little bit about your project.
It's Kite on a String, the Bobby Kimball story.
Our lead vocalist, Bobby Kimball!
It's about Bobby's career. He had a 62-year career, and it's about our relationship as well as going through what he actually was able to achieve. So a lot of the highs, some of the lows, but nothing, out of the ordinary. But it's more than just a normal documentary of, these guys just going, yeah, Bobby was great. It's very much a human story because of what he's been stricken with. Is called frontotemporal dementia. Same thing Bruce Willis has. Yes. In fact, I think Bruce is about where Bobby is right now, and it's pretty tragic. So it's modern day Bobby and my relationship, and interviewing his family and all of the, Toto guys and musician friends and people he played with in Louisiana, and going through his career, and then anchoring with the first record we did in January 1996. It actually started in 95, but I'm telling the story from kind of that perspective of my relationship. I don't know if you guys saw the other day on social media that a guy in Germany sent me Bobby's portion of an interview, and I'd never heard him talk about me like that. And it's just, they just crammed it together and pasted it because the guy that was doing the interview was speaking in German and then in English, and then Bobby would speak. But it was about me, and I'd never heard him really talk about me. I mean, he's told me to my face, he thinks I'm great, I love you, and especially now. But so there's all of this newfound stuff of our journey and what he actually really thought of me. And when I heard that the other night, I was just floored.
Can you do a quick recap of what you did with him in the 90s? So you were producing a record for him? Right.
I was working for Jeff Lorber. Okay. I met Bobby in 1989 at Guitar Center. A friend of mine, we both worked on I started at the door and then the guitar floor. My friend Vince Bilbro was the bass player in the Bobby Kimball band, first band after Toto. And Bobby came in there to see Vince one day, and I think he was endorsed by Shure, I think, and he was coming in to pick something up. And I met him, and we talked for a minute, and then eventually I went over and started working at Jeff Lorber's studio, and I was living there, and I was, I would go down and see Vince, and he would play me live stuff of Bobby Kimball band, and he was doing stuff like Whitesnake, and it was like, wow, Bobby's an R&B singer. This isn't fitting. It's not gelling. Magical singer, all that power and R&B chops. So I started writing tunes at my downtime at Lorber's on one of the gazillion keyboards that were laid out for me. And I would make cassettes, and I got Bobby's address on Shoop and would deliver the cassettes there. And we had pagers back then. And so about the fourth time I put a tape in his box, ding, 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 I see my pager. I call the number back, and it's Bobby Kimball. And he says, come on over tonight. So I truck down there, and I get there at like 8 o'clock at night, and I don't leave till 6 in the morning. And we just sat at the piano and played songs. And I played him what I was writing, and he was asking about the songs I was giving him. One of them was one that Dave Barnett and I co-wrote together, and it was kind of Toto-ish. So he was, you know, attracted to that stuff. So fast forward, I end up in Dallas producing and working with my brother-in-law on a record. Bobby comes through a couple times with his band. And then somebody at a party plays him one of the songs Dave Barnett and I wrote called Christine. And he pulled me in the bathroom and he goes, "We got to do a record. This is a hit."
Mm.
And so then years start going and I'm trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to have to raise the money, the personnel and everything. And I moved to San Francisco and I called all of my homies, Mitch Foreman, Joel Taylor, who've all been all over everything, Brian Bromberg, Buzzy Featon, you know, Mark Hugenberger, Alec Milstein. And Bobby comes to me in December 95. He spends a couple weeks with me in Emeryville on the other side of the bay from San Francisco. And we pre-production the songs. What are we going to do? What are we doing? You know, some of them there was a couple like a song called This Time where I had it like a girl, you know, relationship thing, because that's what you did back then, right? Everything is love, 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 baby, baby.
Yeah.
And Bobby's like, no, no, no. And he starts this whole almost political and theory kind of thing, and world gone wrong and what needs to happen, you know, Mad Hatter stuff. So, you know, we worked on this stuff, and then he left, went back to Vinton, Louisiana, because he was living down there at the moment because he had gotten freaked out about the earthquake in Los Angeles. So I called everybody. They were already in place, and everybody came from Los Angeles to San Francisco. And in San Francisco is this great studio called Hyde Street. And around the corner is a hotel called the Phoenix. It's an artsy rock and roll hotel. And it was used basically for this studio and for musicians coming in town, you know, bean bags, lava lamps, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Very 70s, but
man.
cool and hip. So everybody stayed there, and I brought in the horn section from Dallas. The first day we tracked, okay, so there was 10. The first day we tracked the rhythm section, I think on 8 songs, and then 2 the next day. And then there were some overdubs. Then we moved upstairs and it started vocal time. And that's when I was telling you, you know, that was January 16th, 1996. I know these dates. They're ingrained now after doing this. Some things are ingrained. So Bobby and I started doing the vocals. And as I told you before, we had enlisted Michael McDonald on some backgrounds, but that fell through. And then in comes Mickey Thomas. So, you know, we spent about...
That's a change.
Right. It's a drastic change,
Yeah.
you think, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, like on Two Souls, when you hear him release, it's just magical. I mean, and for me, as I told you the story earlier, I was going across the Bay Bridge when Michael McDonald canceled, and Bobby and I were doing vocals and, you know, grinding it out. And it was late at night. I'd left at 3:30 in the morning. I was driving over the Bay Bridge. And as I told you before, both of you before, Sorry You, Sorry Me, a Starship track came on. And Mickey's just, he's up in that rarefied air.
Yeah.
You know, and I pulled the car over. I got over the Bay Bridge, pulled over at Christie Avenue. There was a Denny's and there was a phone booth or a payphone there because we didn't have, you know, it wasn't big cell phone time at that moment. I mean, I think there were cell phones, but not that many. But anyway, so I called Bobby at the Phoenix and I said, "Do you have Mickey Thomas's number?" "Absolutely." I call Mickey. Mickey, I left him a message. He called me back the next morning. And then the following night he was there.
Jeez.
With bells on.
Wow. You know, I'll hand it back to you for a second time, but I had made a note because I was thinking about this project today, knowing we were going to talk to you. And I wrote down a note that, you know, Bobby set a standard that his vocal delivery, the power, as well as the R&B nature of it was so unique. There were a lot of bands and a lot of people trying to do, you know, that high tenor thing, you know. Mickey Thomas was one that came up. I thought of Lou Gramm. I thought like Jason Sheff, and even like Pete Cetera and Steve Perry sung up there, but it was different, you know. But Bobby set a bar that was really difficult to chase, even for these other great vocalists in that area.
Right. As Jeannie Tracy, a premier background vocalist and artist in herself, one of the three that I used on the record from Narda Michael Walden's camp, you know, she sang with Aretha and Whitney and everything. As she said in this documentary, the growl.
Yeah.
Tony Lindsay, who was with Santana, same thing, the growl, because he was capable of like excelling. There was first of all, the power in his voice was so strong. If you were next to him in the vocal booth, you had to run for dear life.
Yeah, you've got that Gaines quote in there that says Gaines said the guy could sing through granite.
Absolutely. And when he would laugh, I mean, if you weren't prepared,
oh man,
you were in total utter shock. I mean, because it was just so strong. Yeah. And you know, someday maybe they'll you know, break down his lungs and find out he was like half Tyrannosaurus Rex or something.
Yeah.
I don't. The power, but he could also be delicate, like he was.
We hear that at times. Yeah.
You know, Steve Porcaro, that great part of the interview talking about a secret love.
Yeah.
You know, he could surprise you.
Yeah.
He could surprise you. You know.
Yeah, this documentary was going to be amazingly interesting no matter what, you know, provided you got the interviews, which you did, and you got some found footage. But bring us up to modern day, where now he's also struggling with his health. So give us an update on that, because that's what makes this so poignant. At the time that it comes out, it's just going to be so powerful in so many ways. Okay,
so first of all, I would like everybody to understand that, you know, it's not my intention, because he's my dear friend and I love him and his family dearly. I would like people to learn through this of things I went through, things he's gone through, and where he's at now. It's not like this is a carnival show and, you know, you're putting the Elephant Man on display here. He was a unique artist, and he's now in the stages, the deep stages, the last kind of stages of frontal temporal dementia, which is tricky. You have your normal dementia, which is, you know, they can't remember anything and they kind of little bit of aggression, maybe some more. But with this, you have behavioral memory, no empathy. But one of the unique things is that I had to fool him when I was just there this last time, because he could become aggressive about your car. He wants you to take him to the DMV. He thinks he can get his license back. He would take everybody out and end himself if he took a car out, and he wouldn't know how to get home. Yeah. But they think nothing's wrong. This disease, they don't think anything's wrong at all. Mm-hmm. So empathy was a big thing in there. But Jasmine, his wife, pointed out to me, and she was right. I would park my car down the street and I would come with his cookies, and he would say, "How did you get here, John?" And I would say, "I walked." Yeah. "How long did it take you?" You know, because he would say, "Where I was coming from Pasadena." "Oh, it took me 3.5 hours." And I was, "Wow, Bobby, it's a long walk." And he goes, "Oh." And then, you know, after our hour or two or whatever of hanging out and talking and filming and, you know, going through stories, he would go grab Jasmine and say, "Please, we got to take him home." Yeah. And that's not a trait of this frontal temporal dementia. Usually they don't care. You know, that part's gone. But he was blowing her up. So then she asked me to change it to tell him that somebody dropped you off. And that worked better.
Yeah.
So he's in the deep throes of frontal temporal dementia, just as Bruce Willis, but Bobby's probably a year or more advanced from what I can tell. I don't know Bruce Willis and I don't know his family, but hearing all the stuff I'm hearing and working with the Association with Frontal Temporal Dementia, FTD, they're helping the family, and I've kind of talked to them. It's difficult, man, but he loves everybody, as I told you guys before, and he wants you to know that. He loves his bandmates. He loves Steve Lukather. He loves David Page. He loves Steve Porcaro and Lenny and JMO, and he loves Greg. Once I make him realize at first, sometimes it's hard, and he's like, "I don't know who that is." And then all of a sudden I'll show him another picture and a memory well pop up, boom, and he'll just, and you'll see him almost getting emotional. And then, you know, "Oh, I love Greg. Oh, I love Steve." Constantly, Lukather hasn't left his mind, because those guys were the front of that stage, man.
Well, you're going to be forever changed from doing this too.
I am already.
There's no avoiding it. Yeah.
I am already, man. I did, we shot the opening scene yesterday, because all the interviews I have and all the other footage, but we needed now editing time. It's time to get all this together, the full length rough cut in place. And I wanted to wait. And I realized that my dialogue in the intro, some of it, when I knew when I was doing it, the moment, I knew why I was doing it, but the how. I'm not a filmmaker, it's like, here we are.
Mm-hmm. You are now.
I know I didn't want it to be a typical documentary. It had to be exciting, like the artist.
Mm-hmm.
He was exciting. He was a jokester. He was out of the ordinary. He wasn't a normal guy or a singer. So, and not a normal friend. So it needed to have that energy that he had. He brought that energy.
Is it settled that it's going to be one long documentary, or is there possibilities of it being episodic?
Well, the last I met with, I'll keep names, a company while I was out in California. There's two companies, and the one was like, wow, this should be a series.
Yeah.
He was, there was like a 45-minute with me and a friend of mine that set it up, and this individual, and this should be a series. And I said, well, I sent them an EPK kit, and I said, and they were just traveling back from out of the country. And I said, did you get a chance to watch the trailer? No. I said, would you like to watch the trailer? So I pulled it up on my phone, and then I watched the guy's expression just melding, and then all of a sudden eyes were watering up, and he went, wow, this needs to be like an HBO or a Showtime premiere thing. And definitely, if not that, Apple, Amazon, Netflix. And I never know, you don't know. You're going to go with the best. You want Bobby to have the best and this film to have the best. So it'll be in capable hands. Trust me. There is no around it. It's not,
Well, since we spoke too, I believe you had not yet interviewed Steve Lukather, had maybe not yet interviewed David.
Yeah, where were we? Was it a year ago?
It was
about
that. It was about a year ago, because there was hopes that the turn of the year was going to bring the release of this, which obviously was not going to happen. But who have you spoken with since last time we?
Well, because if it was over a year ago, I think it was. You're right, because because I was like, well, I don't know how they feel, but this is how we were kind of in that.
Yeah, you had a Tuesday coffee set up for Lukather the following week or something.
Yeah,
that
it didn't go down like that. How it went down was I've become very close with their manager, Steve Karras, and I respect that guy immensely. He's been such a help to me and wanting me to do right, and they all want Bobby to have the best. So what had happened was I got to LA and I didn't text Luke. I was talking to Steve Karras, and he goes, what do you need? And I said, I need Luke. We talked about in a group text with Alan Friedman. That's what it was. We're going to get coffee or something, and we'll see how it's going to go. He had some set rules and I don't blame him. You need to protect the image and all that is, and tell a real story here. But, you have to be careful. There's a lot of people's reputations on the line here, and stuff they built over decades. So Steve goes, hang on. Calls me back 10 minutes later. And he goes, you need to be at Steve's tomorrow at, I think it was like 3 or something. And I drove there, and it was right up the hill from where my old apartment was. His brother-in-law, Don Curry, bless his soul, just passed, and was a dear friend, owned the building that I was living in, where Simon Phillips lived above us. And, Toto had put him there when he took over. But so it was right up the hill in Studio City. And I got there, and he's like, he comes out, opens the gate and greets me, gives me a hug. And then it was kind of like, how the hell do you know all these people? and I just kind of went through my, I told him about living at Don's, and I worked for Lorber, and, I just kind of, I need to say this too, saying how to do this. It was really that mental challenge, like, okay, I'll just go get the family first and I'll worry about everybody else later. there hasn't been really a big smackdown here yet. Everybody's been, it's just fallen into place. It's like somebody's pushing me in the back and I'm just like the Pac-Man mouth, you know, eating up the dots and getting all this footage. But Steve was great. Of course, he was a little guarded because he's been used to being beat up over the Bobby and him relationship. And it's not that, they're brothers. And I kept saying, I said that to him as well, man, all these photos and all this footage I go through, 99% of it is him and Bobby on the bus, at the table eating, in a casino, joking, arms around each other, whatever. It was those two because they were the adulation. They were the front. They were the showmen. The other guys were just as integral in the whole situation, but those two were the front of the stage.
Right.
So all that energy and all that emotion was shared between those two. So of course there's going to be dynamics with those two.
I have a question about then the soundtrack. So you were raising money, crowdsourcing for the soundtrack because the licensing of all these songs is a lot of dough. And I know there's a lot of behind the scenes details, but in terms of the crowdsourcing thing, that went pretty well, didn't it?
It did. Now, I won't say names, but there was another crowdfunding that happened around some of these guys. And I don't know if it was handled all well. I don't know enough about it, but I know that some people were severely pissed that they didn't get, and even I'm still fulfilling. I think Tom, I just got back here. I was gone and the editor was trying to send these out and he just finally brought everything over to me. So now I got all the tubes and the posters and the pictures. So I got to run back and forth to the post office now. You have to follow up with this stuff. And it wasn't followed up.
Put my name as producer or something, you know, just keep the swag. I just want a production credit.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just say filmmaker Tom Nixon.
Yeah. There you go. So the Kickstarter was
okay. Successful. Yeah. So I've developed a relationship, Lucille and I, who's Bobby's manager, my publishing administrator and dear friend forever. We've developed kind of a relationship with the Sony people. And they've been more than generous, but here is the crux. I mean, as you can see the board. Let me just grab this board because I'll just read off the songs. You want to do that?
Yeah.
Because I needed this board. I have to have this board at all times, like in front of me.
The whiteboard. Yeah, I saw a picture of this on Facebook.
Yeah, so, you know, we got A Secret Love, Right Part of Me, Tale of a Man, You Are the Flower, I'll Supply the Love, Girl Goodbye, Hold the Line, Mama, White Sister, Million Miles Away, Gift with a Golden Gun, Rosanna, Africa, Make Believe, Waiting for Your Love, Mrs. Johnson, Cruel, High Price of Hate, and Going Home. You know, and it's at first when I kind of threw the list together and ran it by Sony, all they can do is give me retail. At that moment, because they don't. That's why I'm getting the full length rough cut in place and putting the music in there and sending it to them. Nobody else. It'll be private, so they can kind of determine because they don't know if I'm using 3 minutes of Africa or 10 seconds.
Right.
You know, they don't know that of any of the songs.
Yeah, and whether it's under dialogue, all makes a difference.
Right. So it will help. And then you have My Favorite Nation, which is how this all works. You have, you know, once the label and the master content holder being Sony and most of this, once they agree, then the publishers have to agree, you know, it's the scale. It's the way it works. So yeah, they shot me a price back. Well, that's probably roughly around 150 to 175 grand. So at that moment I said, I'm going to need help because I've had to pay for all this myself. I ran credit cards up, juggling limits back and forth. And you know, it's just because I didn't really want anybody telling me what to do.
Yeah.
You know, who wants that? And that could be dangerous because a first-time filmmaker, you know, carte blanche to make a film. It's like, it's part Exorcist and it's part, you know, Willy Wonka.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you to everyone who supported that because that's going to help make this project be a reality.
And I'm still sending out stuff. There's somebody sent me a thing last night. So I've got the list back from Robert because I was almost 8 weeks in Los Angeles and I was sending pictures from there to Robert and he was getting the tubes were separate, and then the posters came, and then this came and that. So it's like, and then, the cost of sending this stuff to Europe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No.
When these poster tubes are just beyond this length of where it would be $5 to send something and where it's changed to $20 to send something.
Yeah, try pressing vinyl and then having to send vinyl out. I did that once. That's not fun. Yeah, once. Yeah.
So then but also what I need to make clear is that unless a miracle happens and I have money starts falling out of the sky or coming out of my cupboards, these songs, the Toto songs, they'll be in the movie, but the soundtrack is a whole nother cost. It's called soundtrack fees.
Yeah.
So if I want a hard copy of these Toto songs, it's a mountain of money. But I couldn't. Could you imagine all these 18, I think, songs, and then all the songs we have, the song Bill did with Bobby's solo Annalise with Guy Allison and Bruce Gowdy, all of the piano vocals that I found of Bobby from Davlin that are magical. And Mickey's redoing one of the piano vocals for the movie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it's I sent it to him while I was driving back just now from LA, and he sent me a message. My wife was crying. He goes, "Yeah, I got to do this." So there's a lot of great music, and I know I apologize if things keep changing, but all of a sudden another nugget. All the tapes, man, that I've gone through, I can't even tell you hundreds of tapes of rough cuts and demos, and Bobby at home with his keyboard just recording and the phone ringing in the background. You can hear cartoons going on, Flintstone. Flintstone. And he's playing a keyboard.
That's awesome.
So the next question would be, if everyone's going to ask us, is when, and that's probably one you can't answer yet.
Well, here's what I can tell you. And now I know everybody falls on that trip. You guys asked it last time. I don't know, January. But then you're like, wow, there's this, there's that, there's this came forward, that came forward, this. So right now we're getting the full length. I hopefully 3 weeks, I will have the full length rough cut in order. I do have to take a trip down to Port Arthur to a museum down there and take a display because they only had one photo of Bobby down there and they want to film it and we want it in the film.
Yeah.
Because it's he was inducted into the California Music Hall of Fame.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got this that I got to take care of. So I'm going to have the full length rough cut done in 3 weeks. It'll go to Sony and then it'll go to the distributors that are interested. And then I'll know from there. I don't know whether they're going to, this is kind of great thing about this. And I thank all of you, including you guys, because by doing this, is that it's kind of self-promoted itself. It's kind of snowballed down a hill and just kept growing and growing and growing. I mean, I did a musician magazine Zoom with Australia. A lot of love came from there. A beautiful publicist, Nancy from Australia, reached out to me, didn't want to charge me any money, helped me with a bunch of stuff. It's had its own life. And so I'm sure that the distributors are going to want to rein that in and do set promotions and stuff. So I'm hoping that they don't start telling me, oh, we want a unicorn to fly across the screen.
Yeah.
Well,
with Bobby on it?
Who does handle like the post-production to make it just so then? Does that come back to you after Sony gives it to the
we have a post mixer, TJ Calloway, that we're using, and Robert Kaufman is my editor. I need to thank those two guys, beautiful guys. Thank you, fellas. And then I'm kind of directing at the helm here and what scenes go where and dialogue. We even have some surprise Bobby dialogue happening here that was found. Yeah, he kind of tells his story through a cassette that I cleaned up. So a lot of great stuff on there, man.
I know you can't promise anything, but is it realistic to maybe expect a release of some sort in 2024?
Yes.
Awesome.
I wish it would come out.
That was your shortest answer of the whole interview.
I do have diarrhea.
That's the one not to trust, then, I guess.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah. I mean, for me, it just, there was like, I talked to you guys last time. I do other interviews, and it's like all of a sudden something else rears Len Kovner, who owned Davlin Studio. Man, what an epic interview that was, and what a sweetheart of a guy. And ground zero for huge records. And that was Bobby cut a demo there, and that became a famous thing. Every label wanted to sign Walter Yetnikoff, Mo Austin. Nobody heard about this. And all of a sudden it comes to in my realm, and I talk to Len, and it's like, wow, are you serious? Right before Toto, every label wanted him. And guys wanted to produce him. And Len had his special thing with him where Bobby sat at that Bosendorfer and cut these demos, but they were great. They're unbelievable, his vocals, and he's singing like a bird.
I do wonder what if, man. What if he had been a solo artist? That would, I mean, we would never know, but that's an interesting
right. So Jeff and David get back from that Boss Gags tour, and I think Jeff, I can't remember now, but I think Jeff comes into Len's studio and he's like, "Where's the tape?" And he listens to it. And he runs over to David because David thought that he was still with SS Fools. That deal collapsed. It was 16 or 18 months, and CBS dropped him because those guys, Floyd Sneed, Joe Sherman, and all those guys really wanted to be back in Three Dog Night. So when David realizes Bobby and hears about this demo, he makes the call, and Bobby decides, I'm going with these guys because they had been hanging out at the SS Fools rehearsals. They already knew Bobby's voice. I don't think Jeff was really a fan of Bobby's voice at first. He wanted Will Lee, like I told you guys before, but David was. David said it reminded him of a Southern church with like all this mystic soul involved.
Yeah,
actually, so he was all over it. And so last time, Lukather, I get done with that. I get down to the bottom of the hill on Ventura Boulevard. Phone rings. It's Steve Karras. He goes, "How did it go?" And I said, "Beautiful, man. Beautiful." And then he said, "What else do you need?" I said, "Well, I'm leaving Monday. It's now Friday, I think. Yeah, it's Friday because I went then to Mel's and met somebody. And I said, I need David." And he goes, "Wow." He goes, "Okay." Calls me back, 12:30 tomorrow. Here's the address.
David Page, for those wondering. Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Yeah.
And you understand, there's no denying it. You got to understand that that's the meat and potatoes of his catalog, really, those first 4 records.
Yeah.
So he was all too happy to talk about it, and he's a genius, and what he did is out of this world, and the way he treated me, and the way all of them, Steve Porcaro, Lee Sklar, Lenny, Steve Porcaro and Lenny, I've kind of developed a special friendship with, man. They've played on this stuff for the soundtrack. Steve and I are working out a thing with The Secret Love where we're going to do some interludes and things. We'll wrap that up in the end, but they've been all those guys, anything. Steve Lukather sent me a message, "Man, anything you need. This is unbelievable. It's going to be great." He was touched by the trailer, and he got emotional about it, and rightfully so. These guys built the castle. They built the castle, man.
Yeah. Well,
how many bands you see like that? That there's all the members are involved in multi-platinum records outside of their band.
Outside of the band, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's not. You got your Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelins, and
I can't think of another good example.
Right. And if that's a mark against them, it's a mark I'd love to have.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, people think that's a mark against them, or they did back then. I'm not so sure anymore. People have learned. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we've been sort of just cataloging that as we've gone in our 4-year journey here on this podcast. I mean, we knew, to an extent, the catalog, but we did not know just how deep. I mean, you discovered artists that you don't think ever saw light of day. And they've got this cast of characters.
They are the centerpiece of West Coast music, period.
Look, I'm going to tell you something right now. I was a fan, obviously, and one of my, maybe if you heard that interview that Bobby gave, one of my wishes for Bobby, and I told him in San Francisco was, I hope you make it back to Toto, because that's where you belong. You were meant to be in that band with that chemistry. I know that Jeff was gone then, but he was meant to be that sword, that vocal, that communication.
Yeah, the sword. So,
wow. The thing is that you can't deny what these guys all did. And by listening to all these tapes and me archiving everything, guys, it's like my Beatles now.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh. Hearing that first demos, and believe me, on that first demo, the piano drum demo with David and Jeff is where it started. That first one, you hear songs from the first record and from the fourth record, from the third record and the second record on those first ones. It wasn't like some of that stuff was already developing and it was already there.
Yeah.
You know, but to hear all the rehearsals, the first rehearsal of Hold the Line, Bobby's making up words.
Yeah.
You know,
that's so cool. Where can people see? There's trailers out. You referenced a new trailer. Is that out? Where can we send people to get a taste of what's to come?
Right. You can go to the Two Souls Production YouTube page, or you can just type on YouTube Bobby Kimball, Kite on a String, the extended trailer. It comes up. You know,
Kite on a String has its own page on Facebook too, right?
Right. It sure does.
So follow that.
I need some help with outside people because it becomes too much. I want to respond to everybody, but I can't sometimes, and they get upset.
Well,
you gotta say
not it. Yeah,
we get a taste of it. Honestly, going back to what I said at the beginning, like I get obviously an update every time someone comments on our YouTube channel, and it's almost always on your video. It's almost always, when is this coming out? Or I played with Bobby in junior high school in this band, and I'd love to be a part of this. And so hopefully you're monitoring those comments, because I don't have time to get back to all these people.
Right. Well, you know, and it's par for the course when you're doing something like this and documenting somebody's career. And you kind of can't blame the hustle, but there are some people where it's like, well, you know, I had a pocket fisherman and I went fishing with Bobby one time.
Yeah, right.
And he told me about this and that. And then you get down to the bottom of it, and they want their songs in here, or they, you know, it's like there's a lot of that going on. But that's the hustle in this business that people are trying to. And it's hard because, you know, you're trying to tell a story, and you can't help somebody parlay their career to get some attention by using this, because I'm trying to keep it like this. And I know there's some people that are upset with me because, you know, they played with Bobby or they did some shows with Bobby, but I have to say, and I'm always honest about it, you know, even after we finished We're Not in Kansas Anymore, there were problems. He was already starting. And some of those performances are just not good. Mm-hmm. And I, you know, it's like some of these people don't want to remember Bobby in his current state and stuff. He's all love right now. But I chose to be, you know, the gold of Bobby. You know, there is some problem areas in here that have to do with that Africa video and the way that people treated him, and online hatred that you're going to see. And that really nobody deserves that. Yes, they're public profile people, public, you know, but it's like, there comes a time to have kindness take over. So I'm not, you know, if you went through, because Bobby, that last 5 years of him performing was pretty much a short money hustle. It was like collect, and there was no quality control. We begged him to have, but you just couldn't. And it's kind of like Bruce Willis doing those last films where he had in-ear monitors.
I tried to watch those, and you could see that he just wasn't right. And that was so hard. I had to turn it off. I couldn't do it.
But they probably knew, if I had to venture to guess, with the struggles I've been through in life, you know, in your head that, wow, things are bad here. And they were probably, like Bobby, probably wanting to fill the till to take care of their life and their family, you know?
Well, that's why we can't wait to see the entire life story. I mean, pretty much played out on screen. We're going to let you go so you can actually get back to editing, so you can push this thing over the finish line, John.
Right. All right. I will. So, I will. We're hard at it right now. Hard at it right now. And
well, good luck with your distribution deals too, because I know you're going to be in negotiations for that, but we know it'll find the right home, and we know that you're doing the right thing, and we can't wait to see it.
Thank you, fellas.
All right. Well, hopefully the next update is you coming on to talk about the grand,
or maybe you guys release. Or maybe you guys showing up at a premiere. I would love to have a premiere in hometown Detroit. You know.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Bring
Theater in Ann Arbor, maybe. There you go.
Fox Theater.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool, man. All right. Well, good luck with it. Keep us posted, and Godspeed on it.
All right. Thank you so much.
See ya.
I got a call. John Zaika, David
Jeff Porcaro, David Page. Not John Zaika.
Buddy, when I got that call, they told me that they were getting a band together soon that needed me playing with Toto. Oh man, that was one of the best things in my life. I loved playing. I loved that band playing. I loved that band. I was singing.
You remember that night?
Yeah.
And slowly, the memories fade away. That's frontotemporal dementia. All the information you gathered your entire life, gone. Memory of your family, friends, gone. The music you learned, musicians you played with, reformatted like a hard drive. Oddly enough, the one remaining sector, love.
I love you so much,
I love
buddy.
you too. Give me a hug.